That's obviously trying to smell his own fart.
To bring back to the heart of the question of the super chat, though, the heart is not, does it align with Hillary Clinton's interests? The question is, given that there are two countries out there who may have influenced the election, why do we only hear about Russia? Do you think that the fact that they are Jews in the media makes them not want to talk about Israel influence on the elections?
As I said, Israel's influence on the election is also out there for everyone to see as well. Because Nick never shuts up about it. All the people on his side never shut up about it. People talk about AIPAC all the time. In fact, Donald Trump spoke at AIPAC. So there's no lack of evidence that there's an Israel lobby in America. There's only the idea that all of a sudden that influence is something that people aren't upfront about. That there's
so you're essentially saying, if you want the Jewish perspective, listen to CNN, and if you want the non-Jewish perspective, listen to Nick's YouTube channel.
No, I'm saying that as I said before, I don't believe the Jewish interest is represented by CNN. I don't believe it's a monolith, that all Jews at CNN come together.
But you just said, I understand that they're defending the Jewish interest. That's what you just said.
No, I was talking about AIPAC. I was talking about AIPAC.
Okay.
Well, Halsey, if you want to start on Israel, I got to warn you, is this a path you want to go down? Is this something you really wanted to do? You really want to start?
Let's settle down. Settle down.
Sure.
I don't know.
Was this an imitation of Vegan Gains or something?
little Sam Hyde. No, well, I mean, Will Chamberlain. Who is that other guy? Jacob Wool. Many have fallen on the Israel debate, but I mean, if you want to bring on the Israel stuff, let's do it. I'm game.
Okay, go ahead.
Game.
All right. JF's laughing. He had to mute himself. Jesus
so here we go, my guy. All right. You say you're Jewish, and let me ask you before we start about Israel, do you believe that America should be put first? Do you believe that American interests should come first?
Yes, 100%.
Okay. So now we give Israel, since 2016, we started a 10-year agreement where we would give Israel $3.8 billion per year in foreign aid. That's the most foreign aid we give to any other country. We've given Israel the most foreign aid out of any other country since 1978. And I would simply...
Not true as well, but okay. That's actually not true, but okay.
All right. Well, we've given them, regardless, we've given them something in the ballpark of $244 billion. So you can squabble about the details, but $250 billion we've given Israel since the founding in 1948. I mean, that nobody disagrees with that. Do you think that they are serving our interests when they conduct the third most aggressive spying operation on American soil, when they sell our military technology to China, when they develop a clandestine nuclear program, they don't sign the NPT, they steal our uranium? I mean, on and on and on. You look at all these examples, and how can you sit there and say that you are America first, but then you also are supportive of Israel and the aid that we give them?
Okay, let's unpack all of the bullshit that you just said. First of all, every bit of money that was given to Israel before 1989, or it was 86, I think, it was one of the two, I'm not sure of the actual date, were loans that were paid back in full. Secondly, after that, the memorandum of understanding that have been reached with subsequent governments, requires 73% of the money be spent here, and requires that all Israeli tech developed in military industries be given to America as American tech and produced here as American goods that Israel has to buy. No other country on the planet has this arrangement with Israel. In fact, Israel is the only one that gives America something for their aid. And you said the most foreign aid received every single year since then. The UN gets more money from Israel every year than Israel. NATO gets more money, and Afghanistan last year got more money than Israel.
Because we're at war with Afghanistan.
But what I'm saying is that you're saying that we give Israel all this money. We don't give Israel.
Yeah, but NATO and the United Nations are not countries. I said Israel out of all other countries, and the only other country.
And as I just said, last year Afghanistan got more than Israel.
Which is kind of a special case, wouldn't you think? Don't you think?
But as I said, none of them give anything back. In fact, the European super society that you keep talking. Wait, I let you fucking talk. You let me talk.
Go ahead. All right, take it easy, fella. Take it easy, fella.
You keep talking about Europe. We give money to Europe, which basically, again, why are you interrupting me if you're going to complain about me interrupting you?
Go ahead.
We give money to Europe, which supplements almost all of their military budget, hence why Donald Trump handed Angela Merkel a bill. And what we get out of it is the idea that they push socialism because they're able to afford it because of our aid. Israel's money is paid back to America 10 times over because of the tech that America gets absolute exclusive right to. And they get veto power over everybody Israel sells weapons to. So right now, there is a business relationship between Israel and America that you don't want to accept. But as I said, every dollar we give them, 73% of it has to be spent in America with American military tech given to them from America. So if you're talking about it being a jobs thing, then yes, might be able to say to you that I don't like the idea of giving corporate welfare. But at the same time, you're talking about money that's only spent here. The other 27% is only spent on military tech research, which America has, again, 100% rights to. So I'd like to understand how we're giving Israel anything, but yet we're not giving to anyone else who doesn't give us anything in return.
Sure. Yeah. Well, number one, it's not from a jobs point of view. That's not where I'm coming from. But number two, and this is the argument I hear all the time. This is the argument I heard from Will Chamberlain and Jacob Wool. Well, they're spending all this money. They have, and I'll grant you that they have to spend a lot of it here. Actually, they get a much more favorable deal than any other country in terms of the amount of money, the amount of foreign aid that has to be spent on the American defense industry is much smaller for Israel than any other country. Most countries have a much higher percentage that they have to spend on U.S. military, but that's beside the point. If we wanted to subsidize our military, if we wanted to buy Israeli military technology, we could just do those things. We could have 100% of the money go to our defense industry if we just spent it here. We could buy their technology outright if we cared to. There's no reason we should be giving this money to them. And actually, if you look at the way the money is given to Israel, it's funny, you say before 86, it was loans and they were paid back in full. I don't know if that's totally true, but hypothetically, let's say it is. The way that the situation works now is that we give them loans. We don't give them grants, because if we gave them grants, we would have to station U.S. military there to oversee how the grants are spent. So we give them the money in loans, and then we cancel the loans. So we give them basically a grant, but without the oversight that comes with the grant. On top of that, unlike any other country in the world who gets U.S. foreign aid, Israel gets it in a lump sum. They get it at the beginning of the year in full. And what does that mean? Unlike other countries, Israel gets to use some of that money to invest in U.S. Treasury bonds. They get the money at the beginning of the year, and they get to buy our Treasury bonds and make interest off of the foreign aid money we give them. So we give them a loan, we cancel it, and then they make interest off of the loan that we gave them. So, you want to talk about provisions, that's number one, but it's not even that much money. Here is why I oppose it. $3.8 billion a year. And what we are doing, in effect, is rewarding a regime which actively hurts our interests, a rogue regime who actively hurts our interests in the Middle East and in the United States. They conduct, depending on who you ask, the second, the third, or the fourth most aggressive spying operation on U.S. soil, behind only Russia and China, our two major adversaries when they spy on us. You look at, the wars in the Middle East that they've caused us to go in, the intelligence, the vaunted intelligence that we get in exchange for our money, which led us to war in Iraq, where there were no weapons of mass destruction. You look at how, and you say, that was another rich thing you said about how we sell our weapons to them. And you say, the United States gets veto power over who they sell their weapons to. They've been caught red-handed every decade for the past 30 years, selling our military technology to China or other foreign adversaries. So, the idea that, they're really good with our technology. Just 5 years ago, they sold our tech to France, and then France sold it to China. And so our missile tech ended up in the hands of China. And so these are just a few examples.